Most defendants freeze when they hear guilty. They go numb. But these 5? They didn't go quietly. For them, the realization doesn't arrive slowly. It crashes in all at once. These are 5 cases where the verdict triggered raw, uncontrollable reactions inside the courtroom. Ronnie Waneel Jr., the scream that shattered the room. Ronnie Waneel Jr.'s crimes were so brutal that even seasoned prosecutors struggled to describe them without pausing.
And I realized that the floor was covered in blood. Everything in the room was on fire. So clothes, wall, ceiling, once again, visibility was...
Evidence showed that O'Neal murdered his girlfriend, brutally beat her 9-year-old daughter to death, and attempted to murder her 8-year-old son by throwing him from a window. The boy survived and later testified, becoming one of the most powerful witnesses in the case.
I remember feeling scared, not knowing what was going on, why this was happening.
The violence was not impulsive. It was prolonged, deliberate, and deeply personal. From the moment the trial began, O'Neal behaved as if the courtroom was a battlefield.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
He chose to represent himself, rejecting legal counsel and instead launching into loud, rambling arguments.
I know for a fact Kenyatta Berry recorded from her phone did not record calls sped up like that.
Jack, now he's talking about facts, not in evidence of what
He interrupted witnesses, accused prosecutors of fabricating evidence, and openly challenged the judge's authority, even when graphic photographs and medical testimony were presented.
When this happened, did you set the house on fire?
No.
Did you ever see your mom set the house on fire?
No.
How about she set the house on fire?
No.
Did you ever see your mom hit your sister that night with an axe or,
No.
or a hatchet? No?
No.
Did you hit your sister that night with a hatchet? Would you have done something like that?
No.
Did you ever see anybody holding the shotgun other than your father and when he helped you hold it?
O'Neal showed no visible remorse. He appeared convinced that he could still overpower the process through sheer force of personality. On verdict day, the atmosphere changed. As the jury entered, O'Neal stood rigidly upright. His eyes were wide and glassy, fixed straight ahead. His jaw tightened so hard, the muscles in his face visibly twitched. The courtroom fell into an almost unnatural silence as the clerk prepared to read the verdicts. Guilty. The word landed like a physical blow. O'Neal's shoulders jerked sharply, as if struck. Another count followed. Guilty. His breathing became audible. Fast, shallow, uneven. His chest rose and fell violently, betraying a body slipping into panic. Before the remaining verdicts could be read, O'Neal snapped. He erupted into screaming, shouting at the jury that they were liars, that the court was corrupt, that everyone in the room would pay for what they had done.
And like I told you earlier, you will know the truth, whether in this trial or the next. Better believe it. And if you think I'm here to play around with y'all, God damn it, I'm not.
All right, Mr. O'Neal, please stop using swearing language. It's not appropriate in a closing argument.
His voice cracked as it echoed off the walls, raw and uncontrolled. Deputies surged forward as the judge ordered him restrained. O'Neal fought violently. He thrashed against the deputies, twisting his body, straining against their grip. His face turned deep red, veins bulging along his neck. His words dissolved into incoherent yelling, rage giving way to terror. When order was finally restored, the judge spoke calmly and deliberately. She sentenced O'Neal to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At that moment, something broke completely. O'Neal screamed again, louder, higher, stripped of defiance. It was the sound of a man realizing he would never leave prison alive. Deputies dragged him from the courtroom as his screams echoed down the hallway, fading only when the doors slammed shut. For the first time, Ronnie O'Neill Jr. had no control left to exert. Cameron Herron, when the body collapses before the mind. Before Cameron Herron became a name spoken in courtrooms and crime documentaries, he was just another teenager growing up in Florida. Born and raised in Tampa, Herron came from a stable, middle-class family. He was known to friends as quiet, reserved, and intensely interested in cars. Like many young men his age, speed fascinated him. The power, the adrenaline, the illusion of control. It was not violence that defined him, but immaturity and recklessness, traits that would prove catastrophic when paired with a high-powered vehicle. On May 23, 2018, Cameron Herron was behind the wheel of his Ford Mustang on Bayshore Boulevard, one of Tampa's most scenic and heavily trafficked roads. Witnesses later described seeing two cars racing at extreme speeds, engines roaring far beyond anything reasonable for a public roadway. Herron's car was clocked at well over 100 miles per hour. This was not a closed track. This was not an empty road. Families walked here, children crossed here. In a matter of seconds, everything changed. As Herron sped down the boulevard, a young mother, Jessica Reisinger Raubenolt, crossed the street pushing her 1-year-old daughter, Lilia, in a stroller. They never saw the car coming. At that speed, there was no time to react, no time to brake, no chance to survive. The impact was violent and instantaneous. Both mother and child were killed on the spot. There was no intent to kill, no argument, no prior connection, just reckless speed and irreversible consequence. Herron stopped his car after the crash, visibly shaken and disoriented. Police arrived quickly. The scene was devastating. A quiet sidewalk turned into a place of unimaginable loss. Investigators gathered witness statements, reviewed traffic data, and analyzed vehicle telemetry. The evidence was overwhelming.
The amount of remorse, sorrow, and regret that I feel is unfathomable, but I could not possibly imagine how you feel.
Herron had been racing. Herron had been speeding. Herron had caused the deaths of 2 innocent people. He was arrested and charged with vehicular homicide. As the case moved toward trial, public attention intensified. Many struggled to reconcile Herron's age, barely out of his teens, with the magnitude of the crime. In court, Herron did not appear hardened or defiant. Instead, he appeared fragile. He sat hunched forward, shoulders rounded inward, hands clasped as if holding himself together.
It was a sentence heard around the world. 21-year-old Cameron Herron was going away for 24 years.
His eyes were often fixed on the floor. He rarely looked at the victim's family. When he did, his gaze dropped almost immediately. Throughout the proceedings, Herron seemed trapped between who he had been and what he had become. A young man who once worried about cars and friends now faced the possibility of spending most of his adult life behind bars. Then came sentencing. The courtroom was heavy with silence as Herron stood beside his attorney. His posture was rigid, unnatural, as if his body already sensed what his mind refused to accept. His legs trembled noticeably. His breathing was shallow and erratic, the unmistakable rhythm of panic building beneath the surface. His hands gripped the defense table so tightly, his knuckles whitened. The judge began to speak.
Of the consequences, and regardless of who that ended up harming. And then the second part of that, the second component, is the harm caused. And in this case, it's just impossible to have.
Herron swallowed hard, his throat tightening as the words continued. His eyes widened slightly. His chest rose and fell faster. Each sentence felt like another step closer to a cliff. Then the number was spoken. 24 years in prison. Herron's body reacted before his mind could process it. His knees buckled violently, nearly giving out beneath him. He collapsed forward, clutching the edge of the table to stop himself from falling to the floor. A sharp, involuntary sob tore from his chest, raw, animal, uncontrolled. His shoulders began to shake as he gasped desperately for air, tears streaming freely down his face.
It's extremely high, Judge. I'm involved in this case. The family is very much involved, his parents.
This was not a calculated reaction. This was not performance. This was fear in its purest form. Deputies stepped closer, instinctively preparing to catch him if his body fully failed. The courtroom remained frozen, silent, except for Herron's sobbing, loud, broken, relentless. Each breath came unevenly, as though his lungs themselves were rebelling against reality. As the judge continued speaking, Herron buried his face in his hands. His entire body trembled violently, rejecting the finality of what had just been imposed. He struggled to remain upright, legs quaking beneath the weight of a sentence that would steal decades of his life. When deputies finally placed him in handcuffs, Herron tried to straighten himself, wiping at his face with shaking hands. His sobbing softened into fractured, uneven breaths, the kind that come after emotional collapse when shock replaces panic. He did not shout, he did not argue, he did not look back. He was led away quietly, a young man leaving behind the last moment of his freedom.
Because of your existence, 2 beautiful, innocent lives were denied a full life.
In that courtroom, 2 lives were remembered, a family's loss acknowledged, and a future erased. Cameron Herron's crime lasted seconds. Its consequences will last forever. Markeith Lloyd, when defiance turned to fury. Before Markeith Lloyd became one of Florida's most notorious defendants, he was already a man living on the edge of violence. Born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, Lloyd's life was marked by instability, criminal behavior, and a growing resentment toward authority. He had a long criminal record that included armed robbery, grand theft, and repeated violations of probation. Law enforcement knew his name well before the murders, and they considered him dangerous. By late 2016, Markeith Lloyd was a fugitive. On December 2, 2016, Lloyd walked into a small Jacksonville business where 25-year-old Jolene Cummings worked as a store clerk. She was pregnant. Surveillance footage later showed Lloyd approaching the counter calmly, exchanging brief words, then suddenly pulling out a gun. He shot her execution style and fled. The murder appeared deliberate and cold, with no signs of panic or hesitation. Jolene Cummings died at the scene, and the unborn child died with her. Police quickly identified Lloyd as the suspect and launched a statewide manhunt. His face was broadcast across news stations. His criminal history, violent tendencies, and willingness to kill made him a top priority. Officers were warned that he was armed and extremely dangerous. Just 3 days later, on December 5, 2016, Markeith Lloyd struck again. Jacksonville police officer David Jacobs spotted Lloyd at a Walmart parking lot. Jacobs attempted to arrest him. What followed was captured on surveillance video and would haunt the city forever. As Officer Jacobs approached, Lloyd opened fire. Jacobs was hit and collapsed. Lloyd stood over him and fired again, execution style, before stealing the officer's weapon and fleeing. Officer David Jacobs died shortly after. He was 29 years old. The murder of a police officer sent shockwaves through Florida. Lloyd became the most wanted man in the state. Schools locked down. Neighborhoods were flooded with police. The manhunt intensified, stretching across counties and dominating headlines. Lloyd was finally captured on January 16, 2017.
What'd you do it? They beat me up. Where have you been hiding?
After a tip led police to a home in Jacksonville. He was arrested without incident, but his capture was only the beginning of a long, volatile legal process. From the moment he entered the courtroom, Markeith Lloyd made it clear he would not go quietly.
This is how Donald Trump writing that stuff off in the field. I'm not even really the defendant. I'm a flesh and blood person. That's a cooperation y'all done charged. That's a legal fiction.
Throughout the trial, Lloyd displayed an unsettling level of arrogance. He smirked during graphic testimony. He laughed at moments meant to honor the victims. He whispered and joked with his attorneys as surveillance footage of murder played on courtroom screens. His behavior appeared intentionally provocative.
I know you do and you feel that way, but you should talk to your lawyer.
A message to the court, the victims' families, and the public that he believed himself untouchable. The evidence, however, was overwhelming. Surveillance video, eyewitness testimony, ballistics, his own actions recorded in real time. The jury found Markeith Lloyd guilty on all counts. Then came sentencing. The courtroom was packed. Families of the victims sat silently, bracing themselves. Deputies lined the walls, already anticipating trouble. Lloyd stood upright, arms rigid at his sides, jaw clenched tight. His eyes were fixed forward, defiant, daring the court to challenge him.
And my jaw broke, my eye out, my nose broke, kicked in my back.
All right, Mr. Lloyd.
The judge began to speak.
And I am contemplating appointing an expert to examine him for his competency. At least one expert, and report back to him.
As she outlined the crimes, the murder of a pregnant woman, the ambush of a police officer, Lloyd's expression hardened. His chest rose and fell heavily. His fists tightened. The tension in his body was unmistakable, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Then the words came. Death penalty. In an instant, the mask shattered. Lloyd erupted. He began screaming profanities at the judge, the jury, and the court itself. His voice was loud, violent, uncontrollable. He shouted that the court had no authority over him, that the sentence meant nothing, that they could never truly punish him.
I'm raising the lecture back then for somebody else I absolutely don't know nothing about. And they framed me,
His words poured out in a torrent of rage, echoing off the courtroom walls. Deputies rushed in immediately. Lloyd fought back fiercely, thrashing against them with raw aggression. His muscles strained as he tried to pull free. His face twisted into something feral. He kicked, jerked, and resisted with everything he had, screaming at the top of his lungs as deputies struggled to restrain him. This was not confidence anymore. This was fury colliding with inevitability.
Mr. Lloyd, would you like a public defender appointed to represent you?
You have a claim against him, may I ask who your name is, ma'am?
All right, I'm finding he didn't fill out any paperwork corrections. It's my
record,
understanding
please.
he didn't want to, so I'll go ahead and find
Could
that
you
he's
state
waived
your
his
name
appearance for
the
today.
record, please, ma'am?
His first appearance is over. Good luck to you, Mr. Lloyd.
As more deputies joined in, Lloyd's defiance began to crack. His shouting turned frantic, his voice cracking under the weight of what had just been sealed. The courtroom descended into chaos. Chairs shifting, commands shouted, metal clinking as restraints were tightened. The judge remained composed, watching silently as order was restored. Lloyd continued yelling as he was dragged toward the exit, his words losing clarity, dissolving into rage and desperation. His body resisted even as reality closed in around him. The man who once smirked at the system was now being physically removed by it. As the doors closed behind him, the courtroom fell silent. In that moment, the illusion was gone. Markeith Lloyd had spent years believing himself above consequence, above authority, above law, above life itself. But in the end, defiance gave way to fury, and fury gave way to finality. Justice had spoken, and for the first time, Markeith Lloyd could not shout it away. Michael Draka, when anger collapsed into panic. Michael Draka believed the law was on his side. He was convicted of manslaughter after fatally shooting an unarmed man during a parking dispute outside a convenience store. Surveillance footage showed Draka aggressively confronting the victim, escalating the argument, and ultimately firing a single fatal shot. The video became central to the case, contradicting Draka's claim that he acted in self-defense. Throughout the trial, Draka appeared confident, almost smug.
Did you make the decision to shoot when you pulled the gun out, or was that decision made afterwards?
Negative decision I made as soon as he moved.
Okay. Did you remember having time to think and process
No
things?
time to think.
But you
as
had
soon as that gun was out, the twitch goes, that's it.
He sat upright, often shaking his head during testimony, visibly disagreeing with witnesses. He seemed convinced that the jury would see the situation the way he did, that the law would justify his actions.
He's always been looking for a handicap parking spot. Right. It's always touched a nerve with me.
So the idea of
they're abused to me.
On the day the verdict was read, Draka's confidence was still intact. As the jury entered the courtroom, Draka stood beside his attorney with his arms folded. His expression was tight but controlled. When the clerk began reading the verdict, Draka leaned slightly forward, listening intently. Guilty. Draka's head snapped back. He mouthed the word no, shaking his head violently. His jaw clenched as his hands tightened into fists. When the judge began reading the sentence, 20 years in prison.
I'm going to sentence you to 20 years in the Department of Corrections.
Draka slammed his palm onto the defense table. He shouted accusations, insisting the verdict was wrong, claiming the system had failed him. His voice was sharp, angry, and desperate to reclaim control of the moment. Then the deputies stepped forward. As handcuffs were brought out, Draka's demeanor changed instantly. The anger drained from his face, replaced by visible panic. His breathing became rapid and shallow. His eyes widened as he realized there was no more arguing, no appeal to authority left to make. Handcuffed, Draka's shoulders slumped. He stared at the judge, no longer defiant, no longer angry, only afraid. As he was led away, his earlier confidence lay shattered behind him. What began as arrogance ended in uncontrollable fury, a man realizing that his bravado could not shield him from consequence. James Holmes, the quietest breakdown in the room. James Holmes carried out one of the deadliest mass shootings in modern history. During a midnight movie premiere, Holmes opened fire on a crowded theater, killing 12 people and injuring dozens more. The attack was carefully planned, methodical, and devastating. Throughout the trial, Holmes displayed an eerie emotional flatness. He sat motionless, rarely reacting to testimony or evidence.
Water or anything?
Yeah.
We're
going to drink.
Water.
Just water? Okay, sure.
I'll get the opposite.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just sit down. Seat there for me, please.
Yeah, we're okay, yeah.
His blank stare and still posture gave the impression of someone disconnected from the reality unfolding around him. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom was silent. Holmes sat completely still as the jury announced multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. There were no outbursts, no words, no visible resistance. Instead, his body betrayed him. As the judge continued speaking, Holmes began to rock slowly back and forth in his chair. His movements were subtle at first, barely noticeable, but they grew more pronounced. His eyes widened slightly. His jaw trembled. He blinked rapidly, repeatedly, as though trying to wake himself from a nightmare. This was not rage or defiance. It was a silent, psychological collapse. Holmes continued rocking as the judge finished reading the sentence, the finality settling over him. For the first time, the weight of permanent imprisonment appeared to reach him. There were no screams, no struggle, just the quiet, unmistakable sound of a mind giving way under the realization that there would be no escape. Not every realization is quiet. Some arrive with screams, shaking hands, or complete emotional collapse. But every verdict carries the same message. There is no undoing what's been done. If these courtroom moments keep you watching, comment which reaction shocked you the most, and subscribe for more real cases where the truth hits hard and fast.